Okay, I want to talk about rules in sport. So it's an interesting thing when you look at rules in the context of morality. And in sport, you have a lot of rules that don't have to do with morality. They would be non-moral values, really. They would be you know, like if you step out on this line, you're out of bounds. That just has to do with making the game fun. Or we agree that the ball goes in the basket, it's worth 2. If it's behind this line, it's worth 3. That's all. Those are socially contrived, and they make the game fun, right? Because if we all agree upon that, well, that's what makes sports. So really, it's about cooperating and agreeing by the rules. And even a game, you know, like pickup basketball doesn't even have referees, and people, it's a good sport. I mean, people, you still have a winner loser. People play hard. They call their own fouls, and it just shows the cooperative nature of sport. And so really we should recognize that as an athlete, and that it's not about like circumventing the rules, because the rules are what makes it fun. But even at that, there are several rules in sport that do have to do with morality. Like, that's why technical fouls exist. If you get red cards, yellow cards in certain sports, a lot of those infractions are for moral reasons. But we can save the flop argument, taking a dive in soccer, and even the red card. There's some interesting discussions surrounding that, whether or not it is immoral, or if it's a non-moral value, or maybe even it's amoral. So rules, when we look at universal context, if you're striving to arrive at universal principle, the rules can be confusing, because like Kohlberg says in his stratification of moral values, you have rules are a lower order of thinking from a moral reasoning standpoint. And a good example of that, there are so many good examples of that. Like, lots of rules have nothing to do with morality, for one, and then rules are very fickle. You go to different cultures, different states, even they have different rules. Like, just look at the marijuana regulations. Some states allow it, some don't. So which one's right from a moral standpoint? So we can't just base our morality on what the rules are. And you can see plenty of laws that plenty of laws that exist that were immoral, and still today laws exist that are immoral in many countries, including the United States. So a good example of that is all the civil rights movement was against these laws that existed, like the Jim Crow laws. Lots of laws that allowed for racism to exist, allowed you to discriminate. So that shows you right there, you don't just say you do things because a rule's a rule. It's a lower level of moral reasoning. It's certainly higher than some other levels of moral reasoning, like selfishness, doing things just to appease me only. But it's not the universal principle. That's why we need to arrive at universal principle. And if there are laws that are immoral, we should be changing those, or taking a stance, or doing something about that. So just look at Colin Kaepernick and what he was doing. That's what he was taking a stance for, what he believed to be an injustice. So he, like others, like Rosa Parks, taking a stand, or in her case taking a seat, and the same with Kaepernick, in his case taking a knee. Those athletes decided to were trying to prove a point about universal nature. Whether or not they were right or wrong, I don't know. That's for us to figure out here. I think people in history have recognized the importance of Rosa Parks. When they're going to put her on a piece of money anyway, these people go down in history as and Kaepernick actually has set a legacy. It's kind of interesting. So new tree down. All right, I'm gonna wrap up that discussion. You can look more into Kohlberg, and I'm gonna hop this tree and get going. GoPro, stop recording.